Blacksmithing is something that has always interested me. Since you're watching this video, I assume it interests you as well. The hardest part to learning to work with iron is usually the first step, getting started. This video is designed for those with a curiosity about blacksmithing, but who are also unsure about how to get started. So let's get to it. First of all, every blacksmith needs 3 essential tools in order to begin working with iron. You need something to heat the iron, something to pound on the iron, and something to work the iron on. The great blacksmiths I know would advise you not to worry about having the best of these 3 tools. Just work with what you can get and go from there. These 3 essential tools are better known as the forge, the hammer, and the anvil. Let's talk about the forge. Forges come in all shapes and sizes. Some are very sophisticated, others rather simple. The key to the forge is its ability to contain the fire you create to heat the metal. Of course, as you're working with fire, many hazards could arise. Make sure any forge you use is sturdy, is well removed from flammable materials, contains a quality means of controlling airflow into the fire, and has an outlet for the smoke that comes off of the fire. It is also advised to have a readily available water source around just in case something goes wrong. Now that we understand the dangers of working with a forge, let's discuss the forge itself. Most forges are going to be made of brick or cast iron. Both can withstand great temperatures and both offer a really solid means of containing your fire. Forges need to allow for what blacksmiths call fire maintenance. This means that you need to be able to control the fire by quickly bringing it up to a large flame, then have the ability to quickly bring it down to a low burn. Fire maintenance is controlled by the bellows, or, for most modern forges, a blower. Basically anything that can drive airflow in a controlled manner into the fire, causing it to grow larger or smaller as the blacksmith requires. The forge consists of 4 main parts, one of which, the bellows or blower, we've already discussed. The fire pot is a depression in the middle of the forge where the fire is centered. This is where the blacksmith will start the fire and will place the iron to be heated. At the bottom of the fire pot is a grate that functions similarly to a drain in a shower. This grate, along with the pipe below it that carries air to the fire, is called the tweer. The tweer is attached to the bellows or blower, which are used to force air through the pipe and up into the fire. The last part of the forge is the chimney. Open-air forges do not need a chimney or vent pipe, as the smoke from the fire is simply released into the air. However, indoor forges need a means of collecting the smoke and removing it from the building, and this is done by means of a chimney, which acts just like a chimney on a house.
There are 2 primary types of forge. There are solid fuel and gas fuel forges. Coal forges burn coal, the most common solid fuel, or commercially prepared coke. Coal or coke tend to be the standard or most preferred method of fueling a forge. Coal allows the blacksmith to achieve fire temperatures of around 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Gas forges tend to operate on propane or natural gas, with propane being the more portable of the 2. While they burn cleaner, meaning they produce less smoke, they tend to lack the high temperatures that can be achieved by using a coal forge. Gas forges tend to be used for smaller projects, like knife making.
The next essential tool for the blacksmith is a hammer. The hammer is used to pound the metal into shape. While most blacksmiths will acquire many specialized hammer over the course of their lifetime, it is really only essential to have one type of hammer to begin working with iron. The hammer should be light enough to work in a steady manner. Most blacksmith hammers will weigh between 1.5 and 3 pounds. The last essential tool for a blacksmith is the anvil. Like the hammer, it is not essential to have a quality anvil to begin working iron. Many blacksmiths around the world do amazing work using whatever hard surface they can find. Some people will use a large piece of solid iron, some find pieces of railroad track and use that. Still others will find an inexpensive cast iron anvil at a hardware store and begin using that. The key is to find something hard enough to begin helping you shape iron as you hammer it.
Quality anvils are extremely durable and if treated well could last for hundreds of years. In fact, the most sought-after anvils tend to be 80 years or older. There are a number of different types of anvil, but 2 of the most common are the London pattern anvil and a European pattern anvil. The London pattern anvil became very common in the 1800s. It has a narrow waist, a single large horn, a table or step, a large face, and a hardy hole and pritchel hole near the heel of the anvil. The European style anvil tends to have 2 horns, no table or step, and the large face flows smoothly, all the way along the top of the anvil. The hardy hole tends to be on the face close to the rounded horn. Smaller models may not have a pritchel hole. There is commonly a pritchel hole at the other end of the anvil from the hardy hole on larger models. European-style anvils tend to have a thicker waist, ensuring more strength to support the work.
Most modern anvils will have a square hole, mentioned previously, called the hardy hole, and a round hole known as the pritchel hole. The hardy hole is used to hold special tools that help the blacksmith work hot iron. The pritchel hole allows the blacksmith to punch a hole in a piece of hot metal without hitting the anvil. Essentially, the punch would push right through the metal and go into the pritchel hole, creating a perfect hole in the hot iron. The hardy and pritchel holes are used for a wide variety of tools. Some cut the iron, others bend it. Some help you create a scroll, and still others simply hold the iron in place while the blacksmith works with it. Hardy holes are extremely valuable to a blacksmith and make working with iron much easier. A non-essential but primary tool used by blacksmiths is what is commonly called a leg vise, a post vise, or a blacksmith's vise. These are all names for the same tool. For the sake of this video, I'll call it a leg vise. It's called a leg vise because it has a long leg that extends downward toward the floor. This leg is placed on the floor or on a solid piece of metal so that the ground will absorb the force delivered to the piece of iron being hammered in the jaws of the vise. A typical machinist vise will not withstand the long-term pounding that a blacksmith will place on it, so the leg vise is the ideal type of vise for blacksmiths. Now that we have the essential and primary tools of a blacksmith covered, let's talk about some of the specifics that someone learning to blacksmith will want to know. We'll begin by discussing many of the fundamental techniques of a blacksmith. Drawing. Drawing is a technique used to hammer a piece of metal and make it longer and thinner. This practice is called drawing out. As the blacksmith draws out a piece of metal, it will lengthen and inevitably get thinner, decreasing its cross-section. This may be done for any number of reasons. Some common uses of drawing out the iron may be to make the stem of a flower. If you played with Play-Doh as a child, you may remember taking a clump of it and rolling it on a table until it was very long and thin. This is the same concept blacksmiths use when drawing out iron. Tapering. Tapering is when the blacksmith brings a length of iron to a point. This looks very much like a pencil once it has been sharpened. A blacksmith may taper a piece of iron for a number of reasons. This is done to make hooks and anything else with a point, perhaps like an ornamental leaf. Bending. This is very easy to understand. There are a number of ways a blacksmith will bend metal. Bending may serve a functional purpose, as in the design of a coat rack, or it may be simply ornamental, as you see various types of bending when you see ornate wrought iron gates and fences. Upsetting. This is an old word that essentially means pounding the end of a piece of iron back onto itself in order to make it thicker, increasing its cross-section. The blacksmith will literally hit the end of the iron, causing it to shorten and inevitably grow thicker. This may be done for any number of reasons. One common reason for upsetting iron is to create a larger and thicker foot at the bottom of a table leg. Spreading. This is the act of spreading the iron more widely than its current width. A blacksmith will hammer the iron and it will become thinner and wider. This is called spreading the iron. Spreading, like other techniques, may be done for many reasons, but a common reason for spreading iron is to create a fishtail look on the end of a piece of iron for ornamental reasons. When making a leaf or a spoon, a blacksmith must use spreading to widen the metal in these situations as well. Punching. Punching is the act of driving a hole in a piece of iron. A blacksmith will hammer a special tool called a punch through the hot iron, creating a hole. This is done for many reasons, but is often used to connect two pieces of metal together or to allow one piece of iron to pass through another. Slitting. This is the act of cleaving a piece of metal to make a slit. This is often done at the end of a piece of metal to make it fork in two directions. When creating a fleur-de-lis, or when making a firewood fork, a blacksmith will use the slitting technique. When slitting metal, a blacksmith may perform what is called a convenience bend. This is a type of bend that is done temporarily to allow the blacksmith to work on another area of the iron that is being blocked by the other piece. For example, a blacksmith may be making a forked creation and may need to work on one of the points, but that point may be too close to the other point to work. The blacksmith would convenience bend one point to move it out of the way until the other point is completed. Twisting. Typically used to give iron an ornamental look, twisting hot iron is done by placing the iron in a vise and carefully twisting it so that the desired pattern is achieved. You can see this on metal stairwell banisters or on wrought iron fences. Twisting is sometimes challenging and may require some time and effort to perfect. When a blacksmith has to twist a long or large piece of iron, he may have to reheat the metal a number of times. If this is the case, he will then cool the portion of metal he is satisfied with so that it will no longer twist and continues twisting the other portion until the entire piece looks the way he wants it to look. Now that we understand the basic blacksmith techniques, let's discuss the tools of a blacksmith more specifically. A little earlier we discussed hammers. Now let's get a little more in depth and discuss a number of types of hammers and why they would each be used.
Rounding hammer. The rounding hammer is a primary hammer for any blacksmith and is used to pound iron into shape. When the iron is hit with the round face, the rounding hammer moves the iron equally in all directions. Most rounding hammers have a flat face opposite the round face. The flat face is used for planishing or smoothing the metal. The round face is also used when making an interior bend in the metal where the flat edges of the flat face would leave unwanted marks on the iron. This is a staple hammer for most blacksmiths, especially when they first start shaping a new piece of iron.
Cross-peen hammer. This hammer has a flat face much like the rounding hammer, but also has a pointed end that extends laterally along the back of the hammer, essentially forming a point. This is the cross-peen. This hammer is used to move metal in a direction perpendicular to the peen. So, if you were to hit the iron with the cross-peen, the peen would hit it in a left to right manner, and the metal would then be moved up and down, or perpendicular to the peen. This is the hammer used most often by most blacksmiths. Straight peen hammer. This hammer is much like the cross-peen hammer, but the peen is vertical instead of horizontal. Depending on the angle a blacksmith is working the metal, certain peen orientations would be more advantageous. The straight peen hammer hits the metal in a top to bottom line, and therefore causes the metal to move straight out to either side. Diagonal peen hammer. This hammer allows the blacksmith to hit the iron with the peen, striking it at a diagonal. Again, the metal will move perpendicular to the peen. This hammer is typically used when a blacksmith is unable to move into a position that will allow a strike with a cross or straight peen hammer. Ball peen hammer. This hammer has what looks like a ball on one end. This is called the ball peen. This hammer is used in situations where the blacksmith wants the metal to move outward from the strike equally in all directions. The ball peen is very useful for spreading iron when making things like spoons or leads. Those are the most commonly used hammers of a blacksmith. Now let's talk about an important tool that is used to control the metal as the blacksmith strikes it with the hammer. This tool is called a tong. Tongs are like large pliers that clamp down on a piece of metal and hold it still so the blacksmith can work it more precisely. There are seemingly endless types of tongs, but the more common types we will discuss now. Flat jaw tongs. This pair of tongs is the most basic. Like all tongs, they have long handles. The difference is that these tongs have flat jaws that are designed to hold flat pieces of iron while the blacksmith hammers it. V-bit tongs. These tongs have a V shape on the bottom jaw and an upside down V shape on the top jaw. This allows them to very precisely clamp down on things that are round or square. There is also a large open section behind the gripping section of the jaws that allows room to grab things with a large end, like a bolt. V-bit tongs are ideal for holding round iron either straight on or from the side. Box jaw tongs. This set of tongs forms a box around the piece of flat strap metal when it is being held. Because the bottom jaw has sides, the iron must fit within the bottom jaw in order for the tong to work. Most blacksmiths will have various sizes of box jaw tongs for various sizes of metal. This tong holds the metal very securely and ensures the blacksmith a great deal of safety when working with hot metal. Wolf jaw tongs. This type of tong is very versatile. Each jaw has ridges built into it that allows the jaws to act as a mouth holding metal both straight on and from the side. Scroll tongs. This type of tong is used to help the blacksmith bend iron into a scroll. A scroll is basically a bend that spirals around a central point and is usually used in a decorative manner. Scroll tongs make scroll creation much simpler for a blacksmith. Some additional tools that any well-supplied blacksmith will have are chisels, hold-down tools, fullers, hardy tools, punches, rasps, and the cone mandrel. A chisel is used for many applications and are primarily useful when slitting metal. The blacksmith simply places the blade of the chisel in the desired location and hits the back end with the hammer, creating a slit in the metal. Hold-down tools were developed, as you may imagine, to hold the iron still for the blacksmith who is working alone. Two common hold-down tools are the pritchel hold-down and the chain hold-down. The pritchel hold-down is made of spring steel and will slightly bend under pressure. One end of it is placed in the pritchel hole of the anvil and the other end on the hot metal. The pressure in the spring metal of the pritchel hold-down ensures constant pressure is placed on the metal. The chain hold-down is simply a chain that is anchored on the front side of the anvil and has a weight on the other end. The blacksmith will place the weighted chain across the anvil, and the weight will hold the metal still as the blacksmith works with it.
A fuller is used to shape iron by creating a U-shaped depression. It may be handheld or may be used as a spring tool. One common type of fuller is the spring fuller. The spring fuller is a tool that allows the blacksmith to place the hot iron between the two arms of the tool, then strike the top arm, causing the hot iron to be compressed, forming a U-shape on both the top and bottom of the iron.
Punches were discussed briefly, but just to recap, a punch is a tool that looks like a hammer but has a very pointy face. This pointed face is placed on a hot piece of iron as the blacksmith strikes the back end with a hammer until a hole is created in the hot metal. It is important to note that a punch should be cooled by dipping it in water after every second or third strike, so it does not become overheated, which will dull the pointed face. A rasp is used to file down rough edges on metal. These rough edges left behind when a blacksmith cuts a piece of iron in two is called a rag. In order to finish the work nicely, a rag must be filed and smoothed. The rasp is essentially a very rough file. It has larger teeth on it than a file does and is the main tool of farriers, the people who shoe horses. A cone mandrel is a large cone with a wide base and pointed top. It is used to ensure circular pieces of metal are perfectly round. A hot hoop of metal will be placed on the cone mandrel, and the blacksmith will hit it with the hammer until there is no visibility between the iron and the cone mandrel. The term "beat the daylight out of it" fits this tool perfectly. The blacksmith is looking to see if any light can be found between the cone mandrel and the loop of iron. If there is light showing, he hits the iron, closing the gap. This will produce a perfectly circular piece of iron. Now that we have all of the essential, primary, and common tools and techniques of a blacksmith well outlined, let's discuss making fire.
To make a fire, it is common to take at least 4 pieces of newspaper and roll them into a donut shape. Once in this shape, poke a large hole in the middle so that air from your bellows or blower can pass through and place it in the cleaned fire pot of your forge. Set the paper on fire and slowly begin to place a more sustainable form of fuel on top of it so that you can develop a well-formed fire ready to forge hot iron. Green coal can be used, but coke, a rock-like substance left behind after burning coal, is ideal. You can save coke from a previous fire to light your next fire. Coke is very high in carbon and is low in other substances commonly found in coal, like sulfur. Coke will burn readily and is ideal for developing a forge fire. Commercial coke, such as Ferrier's coke, does not burn as readily as coke you have previously burned from green coal. Once your fire has taken hold, add coal as needed. Of course, if you are using a gas forge, all you need to do is turn on the gas and provide a flame to ignite the forge.
Now you're ready to get started. We've covered all the tools of a blacksmith. You understand how to use each of them and how to maintain a quality fire while working hot iron. Now all there is to do is practice the craft to become proficient. Thank you for viewing my video and good luck.